Hello, Brad here, just to say we're super proud that the Friday 5pm podcast is sponsored by the Malt Miller, the UK's best home brew store.
We use the Malt Miller for all of our homebrew experiments, as well as tapping them up for advice and binging on their awesome YouTube channel all the time.
That's why whenever we release a homebrew video, we put a recipe kit live on the Malt Miller, so you can brew with the exact same amazing ingredients that we did. The same ingredients used by pro brewers.
So alongside the Malt Miller's nitro-flushed hops, cold-stored yeast and milled-to-order malts, you can pick up recipe kits for our 5 Points Best Bitter, Russian River West Coast IPA, and now the fastest beer in the world, a hazy session IPA that goes from grain to glass in less than 48 hours.
Sign up to their newsletter at tinyurl.com/Malt Miller to get 5% off your first order. With the Malt Miller's amazing customer service and Johnny's 48-hour recipe, you could order the ingredients on a Monday and be drinking the beer by the weekend.
Speaking of which, it's Friday.
It's 5pm.
So enjoy this week's Friday 5pm podcast. Well, I was going to start this podcast, Bradley, by saying, I don't know about you, but I'm still full. But then I remembered that you didn't really get to eat anything at the Brewers Association dinner yesterday, did you?
No, I didn't. I had 1.5 bread rolls. One of the bread rolls had mustard butter topped with veal ball and what are those potatoes called? Potato press.
You say veal ball like it's a thing.
Veal ball.
Everybody
veal
knows
ball.
a veal ball, right?
Veal ball with like cherry
Blackberry
sort of
jam.
Blackberry jam.
Blackberry jam.
And it was delicious, although I feel quite bad because the veal is like a small little cow, isn't it?
It's a baby cow, yeah.
Baby cow, yeah. I'm like, oh man, I feel bad. I feel bad
Well,
about
I mean,
eating meat in general these days, but
it's not that much less ethical than eating a bigger cow, is it? I don't know.
I don't know either, mate. Let's not go down that route anyway. But
Let's not make you think about your veal ball too much.
The BA dinner was amazing food.
Yeah, so we just to fill people in, we were invited to the Escoffier, which is I guess a private hire restaurant at Westminster Catering College, where the Brewers Association, essentially the CBER of America, was hosting a beer dinner with some of the breweries that are either looking to or already export to the UK. And we had a pretty incredible beer and food matching dinner, all cooked by students at the college and with beer from those brewers. And we had some spectacular food and some spectacular beer. The Creek from Upslope, I think they were called, was really very good.
Yeah,
and we had a lovely IPA from DC Brow. And yeah, the menu was like Brad's worst nightmare on paper, basically, wasn't it?
Should we go? Is this boring? Is this a spoiler if we go through some of the menu items?
I don't think so. No.
It's going to reveal my sort of child's palate as well, though. But anyway, first course, Johnny, was like a heritage tomato salad, right?
Heirloom tomato salad with what's the word?
Pickled,
like a pickled watermelon and a ginger and wasabi granita.
Yeah. I mean, it looked bloody beautiful and had like micro herbs and shit on top of it as well. It looked incredible. Chef Chris and the gang did an absolutely amazing job, as did Chef Adam as well from Brewers Association. I just think it's great hanging around with chefs, mate. I think they're really cool, aren't they? They're like super cool guys.
They're a very particular breed. I think so we were making a video for the BA about beer and food matching, in which we interviewed Adam Dullier, who's a great chef and is sort of head of the food element of what the BA does. So we interviewed him, and in that he talks about how brewers and chefs have a lot in common. You know, this whole debate around whether it's science, whether it's art, how much is which. And the other thing that we didn't talk about in the video, but is the idea that chefs and brewers are often quite similar people in that they do something that's perceived as incredibly cool, but generally they're deeply awkward, not very sociable, often quite grouchy, but usually have often quite a dark and hilarious sense of humour. So if you like all those things, chefs are great.
Very much do. I'm awkward as well. And I like
and deliciously awkward, yeah.
So I was like, these guys are well cool. So back to the menu. I like fresh tomatoes. That I can't eat them. I can't eat like a raw tomato because the textures just do my head in. So it's like squishy, but it's also got a lot of resistance on your teeth as well. And then it's got like really watery stuff in it and like seeds and stuff. So it's a textural nightmare for me, Johnny. It's a textural nightmare.
I think it's a pretty common thing. A lot of people don't like uncooked tomato, and I used to be that way in my teens, and I got over it by. I think a lot of the time it's by having really bad tomatoes, because really good, ripe, delicious tomatoes are much more texturally cohesive. You know?
Yeah.
It's not like tough skin, weird, fleshy bit, watery bit. It's much more.
That's it. It's too much
juice
going on. My brain can't handle it. I mean, it's an overload. But I think was it Melissa Cole said she doesn't like them either, right?
Melissa Cole said the same, yeah.
So like I'm in a sort of esteemed crowd of non-fresh.
Yeah, an incredible chef herself and a writer of books about beer and food. Can't stand raw tomatoes. Yeah. So the next dish was always going to be a nightmare for you, which was the fish course. You don't eat any fish?
I mean, I have eaten. I will tolerate some fish. I think what it is even before like Seaspiracy and stuff like that, I thought, fucking hell, like eating fish doesn't seem very good for the planet with like all the trawlers and like
But you eat a ton of beef,
sort of stuff. So obviously, I'm eating less beef these days as well, Johnny. But beef is like, I know it's the worst. It's like, well, I think fishing is worse than eating. No, beef is worse. Beef is the worst out of all of them, actually.
I think it depends because with fish, we're damaging an ecosystem and we are damaging biodiversity. With beef, we're just straight up polluting the planet. So,
polluting the planet. We're also
pick which one's worse.
Fucking knocking down everything, all of the rainforest and everything, and just aridifying parts of the globe which were massive carbon sinks to just be plains now, where there used to be beautiful forests and stuff. So
anyway, it was a lovely dinner.
You didn't eat any. Oh, you did eat beef. You had the bloody veal. Anyway, so basically we ate like maximum destruction of the planet food, which is delicious.
Which is fine dining, basically, isn't it? Massively intensely farmed stuff that's delicious.
I reckon ducks are pretty eco-friendly, right? Apart from they're really cute. And they look like they're smiling, don't they? Little baby ducks.
Jeez, you can't leave any dish alone, can you? Can I? What about the pineapple's bad? Because the pineapple and coconut dessert was.
Yeah, that looked banging.
How many people are killed by falling pineapples, Bradley?
That was literally where I was going. I haven't got any stats.
We spent too much time together. I know how your bizarre mind works now.
Yeah, I don't think they can fall from a tree, right? Because they're basically like the top of, aren't they like literally the top of a palm tree? So it's like straight up, like, and then it's like a pineapple on top. Am I totally wrong in that assumption?
I don't know. That's either totally wrong and hilarious or totally right. So whichever way it lands, we keep it in. We keep it in the pod. I like it.
I think it grows like right in the middle of a palm. And it's like the sort of like the flower. Well, it's the fruit of the palm, but I think it's like literally the top of a plant, like you'd have on a flower. It's like sat there, and I don't think they're very tall either. So I don't think.
I've just googled it. They're pretty small. They're pretty short.
Yeah, I don't think that many people are killed by pineapples every year.
How about how many people get savage pineapple cuts off the little spines?
Oh, mate, loads. I reckon loads. Also, there's like, if you Google like how to open a pineapple, you can like open a pineapple in really interesting ways, and because it's like this crazy
I'll be the judge of whether they're interesting ways, Bradley. Doesn't sound like something I'm going to be doing with my day.
I've watched videos where people like pull out a segment from the side of it, so they like do something to it, and it all sort of shakes apart pretty much. Because each one of those sort of, what would you call it, polygons of pineapple is like a separate little sort of prism with inside it. So like we cut them sort of in, kind of like circles, but you can pull them out as well as like a shard. Unless the videos I've seen are fakes. They might be deep fakes, Johnny.
Yeah, you could be watching some TikTok fakes there, buddy.
Yeah. I don't know.
Could be.
I thought it was quite interesting.
Anyway, we're a beer podcast. That was the dinner. Brad had some bread. I had a wonderful time. And we were making a great film that's going to be out in about a month, all about beer and food matching with some great chefs, the amazing Adam Duglia and me. So that's out in a month. That's what we were doing yesterday. And what we doing? Well, I guess what we're doing today, we're going to LCBF, aren't we, Bradley?
LCBF, mate. I am off to a wedding Saturday morning, so I am not allowed to get totally pissed because I have to be driving quite sort of reasonably early in the morning.
So you're going to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's
yeah.
That's how we stave that off.
Breakfast, beer, lunch, beer, dinner, beer. Yes, I'm having all three of them. No, I will have some food, I promise.
To those who don't know, Brad frequently skips meals and then wonders why he's feeling a little bit drunk and spaced out. Yes, so if you're coming to LCBF this evening, Friday evening, come find me and Brad. I'm hosting some talks somewhere. I don't know where on site it is, and Brad will be going around pestering people to join our Patreon, I'd imagine, and then I'll be joining him once the talks are done, and then I will be there all of Saturday as well. So if you're coming to either of the Saturday session, come say hey. And of course we will give a little breakdown of what we thought of LCBF next week, which I'm pretty sure is going to be absolutely amazing because I've looked at the brewery list. My boy Barron, my local brewer, he's there. He won Raise the Bar, which is their competition to find sort of new exciting small breweries, which I was a judge on. So yeah, I'm looking forward to tasting the latest beers from him, as well as lots of the other amazing stuff.
Have you just dropped a spoiler there, or is that known that he's won it now at this point?
Oh yeah, no, it's been known for a long time because they've done all the other festivals around the country, which he also won a space at.
Yeah.
So
right,
don't you worry about that. Don't you worry about that. We've got some big, not big CBC news, but big beer news to discuss this week.
Oh yeah, okay. Topical chat.
Yeah, exactly. We've always got our finger on the pulse. And sometimes we manage to make it about beer. And that is, so Magic Rock, one of our favourite craft breweries in the days of yore, back when craft beer was cool and niche and analog or whatever it was, and Four Pure, who have never, ever, ever been cool, but used to make a very nice lager, are now, air quotes, independent again. So they were bought by Lion, which is owned by Kirin, which as far as we can tell is not a very nice company. They've been funding genocide in Myanmar. But now they've decided that wasn't core. Basically, they bought it just before the pandemic and all our pubs shut. And I think they went, you know what? We're going to focus our business elsewhere on their other companies that they own because they've just bought
They're off in
Bell's.
America and Australia and shizzle, aren't they?
They own Bell's and they own New Belgium and then they own Little Creatures and some other things. So yeah, they've sold it to a sort of a venture capital group, and it will be run by the guy, one of the early investors in Utopian.
Yeah, which is cool. That's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, so this has kicked off like a big debate as to whether they are now independent again. You know, does venture capitalism or sort of big investors, does that mean that you're independent if you're mostly owned by sort of not the actual person running the brewery? Can you be independent if you once weren't? Can you be independent and ethical if the company that you were bought by and therefore you worked for weren't ethical? Can you still be ethical if you did some bad stuff while you were owned by them? So I think Magic Rock didn't put people on furlough for a long time. They tried to get away with not paying them anything. And then Four Pure did their horrendous branding, which they quickly withdrew, in which they basically tried to say, beer's just beer, innit? And in doing so, basically whitewashed the entirety of colonialism by saying all the wrong things about IPA and just annoyed a lot of beer lovers.
The lager one with the tasting notes was the thing that got me. It was like wet.
Yeah, we talked about it on this podcast. I think it was just like, oh God, I can't remember. It was something like, it's just a lager, isn't it? Or something like that.
Yeah, it was like really dismissive, sort of, and silly, but like in a kind of sort of like dumbing down. Like, I'm one of the dummies too. If you're a dummy, come and drink me because I'm a dummy too.
Yeah,
like,
pretty much
like,
that, and it was sort of aiming an elbow at beer geeks as well, being
it was
these guys are idiots.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it reminded me of like something Nathan Barley would do, where he's like, I'm not an idiot, but he is an idiot, and he'd be like, it's like almost like an inside joke, but it's like not even good enough to be an inside joke. You're poking fun in the wrong direction. Anyway,
there's I've just googled it to see if I can find what it is. I can't find what it said on the back of the can, but one of the main aims was to poke fun at the absurdities of craft beer.
There you go.
Which is bold as a craft beer brand. That's kind of cannibalizing. It's like insulting your own customers.
It's totally stupid. It was like, from a branding point of view, it was like, why are you taking the piss out of the people that are going to buy your drink? It just didn't make a lot of sense to me, and also it looked very, very generic.
I mean, it was a very generic rebrand as well. But yeah, so that branding didn't get destroyed. It got stripped away, all of the sort of the poking fun, which then made it even more bland. But now they're potentially independent, and so I saw these debates raging on Twitter, and I had to step in and just go, like, talking about independence, that's the wrong conversation. Independence is a means to an end, a potential means to an end. It's one way to get where we need to be, which is good ethics, right? Ethical business. So the more important question is, will we start supporting these companies again, given what's happened to them in the last couple of years, or what they've been doing in the last couple of years? And the answer to that is, I've absolutely no idea.
No. So the new owners, there's like a nice sort of symmetry in our beer journey with these brands, I thought, because one of the new owners is one of the owners of Craft Beer Co. Right?
I think that's right. I read that somewhere that one of the Craft Beer Co people is investing as well, I think.
And I remember, like, quite early on in the channel, one of the things we get really excited about every year was like the release of Unhuman Cannonball.
Man, simpler times when Unhuman Cannonball was the big hype release.
That was incredible. And also, like, at that point, Craft Beer Co would just sort of like, they totally raised the bar in terms of their actual pubs offerings, like how beautiful they were, the beers that they had on tap. I remember being outraged at paying like £7 for a pint, but this is like over 10 years ago, Johnny. I was going to a stag do, and we went to Craft Beer Co. I think it was on Leather Lane, and it was like £7 a pint. Well over 10 years ago, thinking about it, actually. 10 years ago? It must have been 10 years ago. Anyway, they like elevated beer into a different league at that point, and it
certainly in the capital, yeah.
Yeah, it was like fetishized, and I think they're responsible for a lot of early adopter beer geeks getting real geeky. And
it was where when I was first getting into beer, and when we just launched the channel, Craft Beer Co was where you'd go, because it would have the best taps. You'd always meet people you knew in those locations as well. It was where you went. So and Magic Rock, would have had a lot of support from them, and Magic Rock probably would have supported them a lot. So it is going into the hands of somebody, I think, who has a part of its story, which is very nice, and hopefully they can do good with these brands and turn around both the decline that I think both of those breweries have seen since being bought out, but also to get back to their core values, which was, Magic Rock were incredible at making, exceptionally hoppy West Coast style beers, and also made some delicious sours and some great, like, sessionable dark beers. And all of that's kind of been a bit lost as they went very supermarket. And 4Pure, if I was taking over the reins of 4Pure, I'd be like, right, we had a world-class Pilsner for about 2 years. We're going to bring that back, and we're going to make that a killer beer. And then, off the back of that, we'll focus on everything else that can stem from a great Pilsner, which is lots of other great, sessionable, crushable, balanced beers, and become a brand that, 4Pure still has, despite all the damage that's been done to that brand, they still have the opportunity to be this brand that is safe. You go into a pub that doesn't have a lot, but there's 4Pure. It's a 4% session IPA, and it's going to be banging. That's where they've got to sit, because if they try to play in the really geek space, or if they try to play in the really, really broad space where, say, pretty much Camden and Beavertown have kind of gone, then they're going to lose out to those two much better brands and very good broad beers. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can do that.
Big time, big time. Do we want to? You told me a friend of ours has just bought a brewery, or the sort of rights to a brewery. Do you want to talk?
Oh
about
no,
that?
that's still under wraps, Bradley.
Okay. Oh right, okay.
That's still under wraps. But
good job I didn't spurt that out then, eh?
I know, right? Well, we're not live, so I could have edited it out. But there is some exciting news coming from one of our friends eventually. But yeah, we can't talk about that quite yet. Shall we take on the this week's video?
Yeah, man. I think calling it a video is downplaying it. It's a documentary, Johnny.
It's a documentary.
As some of the comments have said, possibly our best video ever. Right?
You know, I read that as well and was like, I don't think it can be, but I don't know. Like this project, basically, about a month ago. So we said we were going to do this project just over a month ago, which is insanely short timelines for what we had to put together. And then about a week later, I tried to pull out of the project. And by that point, like, Siren had gone all in with us. And we're like, we're going to have Craft Beer Channel make a documentary for this. There's going to be a screening. And they started promoting it. And so Darren was like, if you pull out, you've put us in some real hot water here. So I was like, okay, Darren, well, we're going to do this, but I don't know how good we can really make it with these timelines and this budget. And it took over my life for 4 weeks completely. And it took over your life for a week of like doing something. How long would you have wanted to spend on those animations, ideally?
Oh, I mean, I like animating, so it's good. And I think they were worth it. I think, they elevated that and they explained stuff in a visual way. For people, are more visual, it's always good to have a sort of a graph or some sort of schematic.
Yeah, but I mean, you churn that out so fast, and so beautifully.
Yeah. Thanks,
and I think even if it isn't the best video we've ever made, it's certainly the most. I was about to say like the most greased we've ever been. Like the most fluid. Heads down, get this done. But we've
we were running on all cylinders. Like it was a massive effort to get that out in time, wasn't it? It was like stressful as hell and everything. But I think it was great and like bloody hell, those beers, mate. Beers are great.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that some of them... I mean, obviously, they can't take those exact beers sort of core because that would be taking the advice of other breweries and basically producing the same beer. But I think they'll have learned a huge amount from that, and I really hope that they take inspiration. I'd love to see, a Cascade-based pale ale from them, like longer term or seasonally. And also that, my favourite of the bunch, not necessarily style-wise, but the closest to the original was definitely that Focal Banger. It was super, super good.
I mean, it was just great. I'm looking forward to drinking it later, actually, when we're at LCBF.
Yeah, it's going to be at the LCBF bar. So if you are going, even if you don't see us, go to the Siren bar, watch that documentary, and then go to the Siren bar, and you should be able to taste those 4 beers. Another thing you can do, so we've been given a discount. It's available. It's 15% off site-wide at Siren Craft Brew's website, including the Time Hops beers. So go there, and it's valid till the end of August, and use that. The code is CBC15. So go get yourself the cans if you can't come to LCBF. And also, we're just finalising details and checking everybody can make it, but Siren might be doing Siren definitely are doing a tasting on the 18th. So next Thursday, they're doing a live tasting of the beers. So if you get the beers for then, you can do it along with them. And I think I'll be joining. I haven't even told Brad that this is happening. Hopefully Brad will be joining too. But that's, I think, at 7 p.m. next week on Thursday.
Where's that happening? This is very last minute.
On StreamYard.
Oh, on StreamYard. Okay. So
on YouTube. Sorry, StreamYard's what we'll be using to put it on YouTube.
From the comfort of my sofa.
Exactly that. Yeah. Your new sofa.
Okay. My new sofa I'm currently sat on.
I can't believe you haven't told that story. Did you tell that story? I don't know. We don't have time for it. What comments did you find on the channel on the video?
Fried Oompa Loompa said, "Fuck, I love beer." I think that it was, I think he meant "fuck, I love hops," but fuck, I love beer.
No, I think he just means all these wonderful stories all about his favorite thing. Mate. I think he loves beer.
This is brilliant. I mean, that's what every time we do something like this, I say, "Fuck, I love beer," because it's brilliant, isn't it? Going these places. Well, we didn't get to go to America this time, but
seeing these places in drone footage we were sent.
Oh my god! Like, it's just incredible. It's incredible stuff. So yeah, fuck, I love beer. We had lots of lovely comments just saying, certain Def said, utterly brilliant, love all your vids, but if this was the only one you ever made, it would have all been worth it. Thanks, I enjoyed this so much. Which I thought was a really nice comment.
Would have all been worth it. We wouldn't have had a career, but it would have been worth it.
Yeah. Then we had another one. Sorry, I don't want to hog all the comments. This comment from Elliot Smith, who I'm presuming isn't the amazing dead musician Elliot Smith.
Back from the dead to comment on our documentary about hops.
Yeah, but if it is, he obviously likes Disney movies because he said, the text on the thumbnail reminds me of Shrek.
Oh, yeah, I did see that comment. That was so good. Like when you sent me that, it reminded me of something and I couldn't put my finger on it, and it's 100% Shrek.
Does it look like, oh my God, I mean, that I find that unsavoury to think about, because I wasn't going for Shrek. And that's quite a nice font, but it's not a Shreky font. I didn't think it was a Shreky font. Maybe it's the sort of the sort of gradient, sort of greeny...
It's the color, it's the color because the Shrek font is that color, and also the Shrek font has like really like big, quite accented serifs, which that font does as well. Yeah. So it's a loose thing, but it's enough to associate it.
It made me think: do I need to readdress the thumbnail? Because
what's wrong with Shrek, man? I know you don't love animated movies, but
no,
it's a good association.
Okay,
don't worry about it. Bit of Mike Myers. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I like Mike Myers. He's all right.
See?
He's all
there
right.
You go. I found a way to quell your concerns.
Although the Plantagenet, whatever it was called, which was his thing that he just put out on Netflix a couple of months ago about secret societies and like all the stuff I like, internet nonsense. It wasn't very good, Johnny. I was really upset. I was like,
I was holding my breath there.
It's like, fucking hell. I thought it was going to be like the next Austin Powers 2.
The next Austin Powers 2, not the next Austin Powers. You prefer the second one, did you?
I think the second one's. I'm trying to remember. I think the second one's maybe the best one. Third one's definitely not the best one. First one's very good. Has it aged well? I don't know, but I remember at the time thinking they were amazing.
It was mostly pretty wholesome, those films. I think they've probably aged okay.
I've even got. I think it's Seth MacFarlane. Is it? No, is it not Seth? Is Seth MacFarlane the guy that does American Dad?
He's the guy that wrote it and stuff, yeah.
Oh. Anyway, there's someone McFarlane makes toys. And I've got a McFarlane Dr. Evil figure and a McFarlane Austin Powers figure. And you push a button on the back and they say all their catchphrases.
Wow, old school.
Yeah, pretty cool. I don't know where they are. I've got them around somewhere. I need to dig them out. Or maybe I don't need to dig them out. But Dr. Evil had a little...
Probably don't.
A little sort of ball bag cat as well, you know. I can't remember what the cat was called, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. He had a bald cat, didn't he?
He did have a bald cat. Anyway, again...
Your comments?
So I've got a comment from Craig K. He says, a great dive into hop history... Goodness me. A great dive into the history of hop evolution. I live in North California, close to Lagunitas, Bear Republic, and Russian River breweries, among many others, and often take these beers for granted. Thanks for giving me some perspective. Which was exactly the... I was about to say emotional roller coaster. The emotional journey that I took with this, because, like I say, towards the end of the documentary, I'd kind of stopped looking for Cascade beers. And I think that it really reminded me, and what I really hope this documentary does is get people excited about the lesser hype varieties. And we've actually got an audio question that we'll dig into a bit that sort of talks about this. But now I'm going to start looking for Cascade in these in the blurbs and in the ingredients, because it's a hop that I'd forgotten how wonderfully complex it is. We seem to approach hoppy beers now looking for juice, right? Or maybe pine and citrus, but Cascade has kind of soft floral tea notes and grapefruit rind and stuff that we don't get a lot in beer anymore. So it was a really nice switch up to have a beer that was all Cascade, and to remember what that hop was like, and remember what beer tasted like in like 2010 when we first started getting into it, like Camden Pale Ale and stuff like that. So I'm really glad that Craig put that comment in there, because that's exactly how I felt about that documentary and why I ended up loving this project, even though it could have been the death of me.
I love that comment from Craig too. the thing that made me think about that comment was like the fact he lives in Northern California near those legendary breweries, but he takes that for granted because it's in his backyard. And I think there's a lot of that, right? So we always want to, the grass is greener on the other side. So we always want to strive to get hold of beers from different parts of the world and everything. But you've just got to look at Craig, because Craig lives in like the most incredible area to live in for beer.
For West Coast IPA, certainly. Yeah,
for West Coast IPAs. And, you know, even at that point when you're living in a world-class zone, you can zone out of it and be like, oh, I want something else. But then
we talked about this with Kyle, didn't we? In the video with him, where we're like, we exoticize other breweries even when we have a brewery, you know, just as good locally. And I think the Colonel is the best example of that. Like, they're never ever hyped, but if you ask me which brewery I'd miss most if I left this country, it would probably be Colonel or Burning Sky, probably, or maybe Siren. Actually, to be fair, like we've been working so closely with them on lots of different projects of late, and every time I'm just blown away by how good the beer is. But yeah, we need to remember that what's in our backyard is probably just as good as what's across the sea. It's just not across the sea.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when you say they're not hyped as well, like it's weird, isn't it? How some brands capture a zeitgeist or sort of imagination of a group of people, and others might fly a bit under the radar, but they're still maybe arguably making better beers and more consistent beers. And
I'm struggling to think. I'm trying to think whether, you know, I think Colonel did have almost a hype thing. It was back when they first kind of started and they started appearing, because they seem to do it very much like, you know, bottles from the brewery kind of thing. So it was all word of mouth. And there was like a, have you tried this brewery, Colonel? But it was never sort of hype. It was just like, it was almost like intrigue, you know? It was like, you know, back when Tyabs was like the place everyone had to go for Indian food. And it was just like, it was never sort of hype. It was like, you've got to go experience this because there's nothing else like it. Like, I'm not sure hype can exist when there's only one thing, one brewery doing it. It's just like, there's this thing now. Have you tried it? It's crazy. So yeah, they never had that sort of hypey moment. So I'm conscious of time, Bradley, so we should probably tackle this question before, I don't know, people need to go to bed. They've been listening since 5 p.m. and now it's bedtime. So we got this question in from Niles Radel, who is the amazing human who got us the macro beers, American macro beers for our American macro tasting, which is now sat at about 250,000 views, which is truly bonkers, and has nearly cost totaled the baggage cost that it would have cost to get it over. This is his question based off of the documentary.
Hey, Johnny and Brad. After watching your latest hop documentary, Hopumentary, I guess, it made me wonder about the many other varieties grown across the world, and I had a few questions. A, how long do new varieties that aren't popular last? 2, can you think of any that you remember being excited about that aren't around anymore? And D, how well do you think you could create a beer out of random, less hypey hops if you just could smell them and know the alpha acid level? Love and beer.
Okay, so lots of questions to tackle there. The first one, I'll take on the first one because I don't really have the answer. So we'll get that out of the way, which is how long do these hops last if they're not very popular? The important thing to remember, as that documentary kind of showed, is that we've only really had this sort of high churn of hops for the last decade, you know? So we don't really know how long less popular hops are going to last, but my instinct is that there will always be a demand for them because different breweries fall in love with different hops and will always want to use them or will potentially put them in core beers. So I think once a hop is released and gets at least some interest, there will be a small plot of them growing for a long time, and I'm not aware of any ones that have recently sort of come and completely gone, except for the ones I'll get to in a sec. The other thing to note is that before that churn happened, obviously everyone was just looking for high alpha hops. So what happened was, you know, it got superseded by the next variety that was, you know, more disease resistant, higher alpha, probably less flavored. So those hops would disappear, and that's why there are lots of hops that were no longer grown for a long time, and that some of those are being brought back, the ones that were, you know, sort of went out of favour because they tasted too much of something, we're starting to bring those back, like Ernest, which is a British hop, Bullion, which was a British hop, but is also grown in America and was used in Guinness for decades. They're starting to bring that back because it's really orangey and pithy, and it's apparently great if you use it later in the boil, which was never really done back then. So, in answer to your question, they last until the next higher alpha variety arrives, and now we're bringing them back. And as for the new varieties, I'm not sure, because the next question was, do you remember any hops that sort of fell out of favour? The one that comes immediately to mind is Sriracha Ace, which was everywhere in like the early, like 2012, 2013-ish, maybe a little bit later.
Yeah, it probably was around then, wasn't it?
And that's just completely disappeared. I presume it is still being grown. I can't find any evidence that like they don't grow it anymore. But it's just not really used, and we now have other hops that present stuff like that, like
it's
Sabro.
Probably it's a fashion thing, right? As well, so it was overexposed, Johnny, as a brand.
Do you reckon? Maybe.
Yeah. So it might probably come back. It'll come back around, but it's like, it's like Derek Zoolander. He's he's not cool anymore. He's done one too many bad campaigns. And he's fallen out of favour.
If you say that for Sriracha Ace, is Citra like a pair of good jeans? Is that always going to be kind of cool?
Citra's like so Hansen. Citra's Hansen's the other character, isn't he? Although Hansen is also
don't they all get washed up in the end?
Get washed out at some point.
I think was it fashion is fleeting, style is forever. I feel like Citra and Mosaic are perhaps going to be style, but maybe it's too early in their lives to know.
No, Citra's got to be a classic, right? I mean, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about classics versus fashionistas or something. I don't know. I think there's an analogy here somewhere, Johnny. I'm just struggling with it.
We're casting out in the dark for it.
Yeah.
So Sriracha Ace has kind of disappeared. That would be a really interesting video in Japanese hops. I'd love to go over there and see whether Japanese hops are really used in Japan in lots of craft beers, see what that harvest and that scene kind of looks like, because I just haven't really thought about it. I haven't thought about Sriracha Ace in about 5-6 years until now I was asked this question. So that's piqued my interest, but of course Japan is quite a long way away.
It is. I think we could make an amazing Big in Japan craft beer channel Big in Japan documentary, where because they just fetishize any sort of culture to the point where they make it their own and they elevate stuff. So whether you're talking about fashions, what people wear, from like rockabilly sort of stuff through to Harajuku girls and all that sort of weirdness, through to like whiskey bars and like listening bars and craft beer bars and like the thing, what are they called, yakitori places, and all these like mad things that are like super niche, but they like make them the best in the world. I'd fucking love to make a thing where we just explored different bars in Japan. I think that'd be incredible. Just you just have to go to Tokyo probably.
There you go. Well, if you want to see us do that, all you need to do is all up your Patreon contributions, and we'll get it done.
Yeah.
Right. What was the next bit of Nas's question?
It was like, could you make?
Sorry, one sec.
Excited about that aren't around anymore? And D, how well do you think you could create a beer?
Yeah. So the final part of Nas's question was how well could you create a beer without those hypey hops? So the first answer is very easily, there's nothing wrong with all of the non-hypey hops. They're just the ones that have caught the imagination, that maybe have, slightly richer oil contents that make it easier. But I think lots of people will be really surprised. There's this movement in craft beer, and has been for a while, because getting hold of Citra, Simcoe, Mosaic is incredibly hard. They're much more expensive. There's a lot of competition. Lots of breweries are trying to use other hops, particularly in their core beers. So if you look at the actual hop regimes of some core beers in the UK in particular now, a lot of them will try to move away from those hops. And often those are the ones where they don't mention what the hops are, which is a bit of a shame, because that then compounds the problem. Somebody tastes it and probably assumes it's Citra Mosaic, whereas actually it's Mandarina, Bavaria, and Ella, or something like that. So it's definitely possible to make it without. Whether you could do it just by sniffing and knowing the alphas.
I don't know. I don't know.
I think you probably could, but you could get quite unlucky. You know, like some hops smell amazing in the bag, but if you use them wrong, they can come out very powdery. Like Galaxy is a great example of that. It smells absolutely incredible. The alphas are not wild. I mean, it's a high alpha. I think it's like 14%-ish, but it's such a raw hop due to its oil contents. I think it's the cohumulones. It means that if you overused Galaxy in the dry hop, you'd ruin your beer. So you might come across a bit of that, or you could smell something like Moto Echo, which it smells delicious in the bag, all lemon and lime, but you need to use a megaton of it to get that character out in your beer. So I think it would be really difficult. You'd need to know what those hops are, and you'd need to do the research to see how they're best used. So
is there a video,
you
Johnny?
Could get lucky.
You could get lucky. Is there a video in sort of the secrets of core beers sort of thing? So it's like the hops, which, like we're saying, they're not hypey hops, like very much like you get non-hypey breweries, but they're like still incredible. So they're kind of the hidden tools that people, brewers use to create the flavors that we love without the big sort of brand names and the big sort of giant, famous alpha hops.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in the documentary, we talked about Centennial being this hop that, has kind of fallen out of favour and is not sort of deemed as like a super modern, exciting hop. But as the Peter from Bear Republic said, like, it's an unsung hero and it goes into a lot of their beers and it's vital in Racer 5, even though you wouldn't go, that smells of Centennial like you would with, say, Bell's Two Hearted, which is purely Centennial. If you take the Centennial out, it's a very different and significantly less cohesive beer. So there's definitely a video in sort of unsung hero hops or hops that are better than you think they are. And maybe there's a video in, we could do a blind hopping. So we just use like our New England base that we have, our homebrew New England base, just sniff hops, put them in, pick our favourites, pick the ones we think would be really nice, put them in and see if we can create a beer just by the aroma and the alphas of those hops. Could be quite good fun.
Blimey. That's a challenge right there.
Yeah, and maybe we could do a double batch and you could pick hops and I could pick hops and we'll have a brew off.
Oh dear, that terrifies me even more because you've got a much better palate than myself. So yes.
Well, no. No. You always say that, but I don't think it's quite true. Anyway, that is the end of today's podcast. We have taken up enough of your Friday, and we have to go drinking at LCBF now. So, Jesus, Bradley, it's 45 minutes long. Oh, Lord.
Oh, dear.
So, yeah, we've come a long way since the 20-minute first episode, but hey, there we go. So, next week's video is another with Clawhammer. We will have the amazing Kyle tasting and scrutinising the homebrews that I have been brewing on the channel for the last couple of years. So, pastry stouts, double IPAs, there's a porter in there, and he'll be giving his feedback. And then we'll join you next week on Friday for what I presume is going to be the horror stories of LCBF, as Brad doesn't have breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So join us for that next week. The Bubble and Friday 5pm podcasts are brought to you by the nerds behind YouTube's craft beer channel. You can watch over 400 mini documentaries at youtube.com/the craft beer channel. And if you love what we do, support us via Patreon and get access to merchandise and our amazing Discord forum, a positive and welcoming space for everyone who loves beer, food, and homebrewing. Love and beer.